Why does the black man serve the white man? Why does everything the black man do benefit the white man? Why does the black man say freedom is doing what I want to do? And why is it that everything he wants to do enriches the European?
Welcome to the desert of the real.
Peace, family. This is your brother, Mr. Holipsism. I haven't done one of these videos in a while, but I wanted to make this because I've been sitting back in the cut and just peeping what's been going on in the so-called conscious community and amongst African-centered progressives and just the cultural conscious African-centered community in general. And I wanted to make a video because I didn't want to get caught in the weeds or to see other people be caught in the weeds and confused by all this ideological mishmash that's going on. And what is important for you to understand is the reason why there's this ideological hodgepodge and mishmash of ideas and stuff is because if you have ideological clarity, then the next thing is movement and progress, going forward, taking steps, short-term goals, long-term goals, leading up to eventual end game. When there's ideological, ambiguity or confusion, then what you have is none of that, the opposite of that. No plan, no goals, no short-term goals, no long-term goals, just intellectual masturbation. Because tangible and concrete things in terms of our so-called community would equal accountability. If things are tangible and concrete where you can actually point to a structure or a system that exists, then that means that you can hold people accountable for the position that you're in as a people. But when things are vague and abstract, like the so-called conscious community, no one's accountable to anyone. You can do whatever you want to do. There's no set of standards or rules. Nothing. It's just a free-for-all. So what I wanted to do was just create this video to give some ideological clarity in a state where African-centered progressives are coming from. First, we are Africans. Number one. Why are we Africans? Because in the immortal words of John Henry Clark, a name of a people should connect them instantaneously to land, history, and culture. Now, I want to be very clear with this. Well, you know what? Let me not get ahead of that. I'm not going to get ahead of that. I'm going to address that issue, that talking point later on. It also connects us socially, economically, and politically to the motherland. I'm not going to have a discussion on whether or not we came from Africa, because the entire scientific community agrees that Africa is the birthplace of human beings. So if someone's going to come to you with information that's different than that, they're going to have to back it and have it peer reviewed by the scientific community to dispute what is already common knowledge right now. So I'm not even having that stupid ass discussion. Also, we are second and third class citizens here in the United States. I'm speaking about the United States because I'm from it. Actually I'm referring to the diaspora, any African that's a descendant of the transatlantic slave trade throughout the diaspora. But I'm going to speak specifically about America because that's where I am. We're third class citizens in this country. And more than likely in any other country where Africans exist where they don't control the infrastructure, they are third class citizens and second class citizens as well. Now, you can either be a second or third class citizen in the country that you're in that you do not control, or the talking point should be pushed that you should have an independent nation state. I don't like to use the Jews too much because there's differences between us and them in a lot of different ways. But in one way, I'm just going to use an example that applies to nationhood and the concept of a nation state. The Jews had to have a place of their own, a home of their own, because they were a landless people, right? So they've created the nation state. It gave them a base of operations to consolidate their resources and their power and build that state up. And this is the reason why everybody says, oh, the Jews are so powerful. The Jews are Now, I know that the Jews were organized more than we were when they started their nation state. I give you that. So it made the building and the progress of their nation state go even faster because they were an organized people and united culturally under this religion. So that's the like, and I know people will say, well, that's the reason why we should have a religion. Bullshit. No, I don't want to do. That's why I said we're different than the Jews. I don't want to do things like the Jews do. But that's another story. I don't want to get too caught up in the weeds in that one. Now, when we talk about this nation state, who are we talking about? Because I'm not a traditional Pan-Africanist in the sense that all of my issues are concerned about what's going on in the continent on every country in Africa. Now, I familiarize myself with what's going on simply for knowledge purposes and to get an idea of what's happening in each region and know the culture and the circumstances of that region. That's just what an independent, politically minded person does, But when we talk about an independent nation state, what we're talking about are descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. And descendants of the transatlantic slave trade are not just in America. They're all over the diaspora. Now, the difference is, well, let me not get there. I'll just state this before I even get to that point. If you consider yourself Native American, which is fine, you consider yourself Jewish, you consider yourself Christian, you consider yourself Muslim, and those are that's your primary center, that's your primary focus. And to keep in mind, I'm not talking about people who know that they're African, and these are the these are the religious faiths that you choose to worship. I have no problem with that. I'm talking about if you identify yourself as that religious faith, if that's the center of your reality or your universe. We're not talking about you. We're not talking about Native Americans, because this is your land here in America. So you fight with the white man, and let's see you get your government in place so that you can take over your land from the white man. That can be your thing. You do that and you do whatever you want to. None of these issues have anything to do with us as African people. I want to be very clear who I'm talking about when I talk about independent nation state. I am specifically talking about descendants of the African slave trade. My forefathers were slaves. I know a lot of people have a problem with that. That's why they run into these escape hatches to get away from it. But you know what? That's cool. That's cool. You can run to your escape hatch. You can be Cherokee and Hopawata or whatever the fuck other Native American thing you want to be. Cool. Just stay out of our business. And if you're going to claim that and you try to get amongst us or get involved in our business, then I want a fucking DNA test. And if you get the DNA test and it shows that you 100%, Arawak or whatever the fuck, or Cherokee or whatever the hell you want to proclaim yourself as, then why are you even involved in our issue in the first place? Go and live on a reservation with the rest of the Native Americans and fight for whatever rights you feel you can get in this country. Leave Africans in the continent and Mother Africa alone. That seems fine. I think that that's a fair thing. Do what you want to do. All of these people, you want to be Jewish and go and fighting for Israel and be under the social, economic, and political domination of Jews? Hey, knock yourself out. You want to go to some Christian country or whatever, you want to go there and worship your God, Jesus Christ? Fine. You want to be Muslim and go to Mecca and Medina and be concerned with their issues? Fine. I'm dealing with descendants of African slaves. People who identify themselves as descendants of African slaves. Not people who are ashamed of the history of slavery, because I'm not ashamed of it. It's something that we went through. If not for what we went through, we wouldn't be who we are right now. And I'm happy with who I am. I'm happy with mentally where I am. I feel I'm a strong African brother. And the fact that I'm even talking about this stuff after the hell that my people have been through shows you how powerful our African culture is. Another thing, we don't owe, this is going to get back to the point that I was going to initially make. We don't owe continental Africans or Europeans nothing. Now, I'm not saying that with hate, because continental Africans are our brothers and sisters. Europeans not my brothers and sisters, but the continental Africans are our brothers and sisters, and I respect them. But you have your own country. If you are on the continent, you are part of a country. You're either in Nigeria, Ghana, whatever place you at, you have a country that you can identify with as your nation. African Americans and slave descendants across the diaspora are landless people. And the point has been made before. I was talking with my nephew, Ambassador Saw, and he said that when we were taken from Africa, there was no African fleet that came to rescue us and get us out. And that's real. I mean, it's not a judgment thing. It's just a reality thing. Nobody came to get the descendants of slaves who came here to America to say, yo, bring our African brothers back to the continent for us. Didn't happen. So in light of that, we don't owe you anything. I'm totally against this. Like people talking about going over to the continent and purchasing land. Fuck that. Purchase land in Africa? Hell no. We are owed land in Africa. If the fucking Jews can get Israel, you mean to tell me that we can't get Africa? A piece of unoccupied land in Africa? Even if it's some people say 10,000 square miles. Hell, New York City is only 500 square miles. I'll settle for that. And there's plenty of unoccupied territory in Africa where no native people would be displaced. They're just sitting there doing nothing. So we wouldn't have a situation like the Jews have with the Palestinians because there's nobody there for us to uproot or displace. Totally unoccupied. Look at your map. It's not as densely populated in Africa as it is over here in America. So we don't owe the Europeans nothing, and we don't owe the continental Africans anything. Now, the continental Africans, we can deal with y'all as brothers and sisters once we have our own nation state. So if we want to interact with Ghana, Nigeria, Senegal, all these other places, we can do it as a state. And we can form alliances. You are our allies. You're not our enemies in Africa. You are our allies. You are our brothers and our sisters. But don't get this thing out of your mind that the African American is going to come over here with their American money and enrich your country. That's not Pan-Africanism to me. Our issue is we have no land. And I want a piece of land on the continent so that this argument about whether or not we are African or not will end, because we will be on the continent and we will have our own land. So nobody can deny our African heritage, which is our birthright. Now, another talking point. There are 44 million black African people in the U.S. alone. In order to set up shop on unoccupied land on the continent, you would need about not what you would need. What is going to be in reality is only about 2% to 5% tops to be settlers, pioneers, to go and settle on a piece of land, survey the land, and find out the resources and everything on that land, and then start developing their infrastructure. 2 to 5%. Now, I know there's a lot of people that's like, well, we expect us to all go to Africa. We got to do. Motherfucker, the vast majority of the 44 million black African people is going to be right here in the United States of America. And now keep in mind, I'm just speaking about the United States of America. We're not even talking about across the diaspora, because those brothers and sisters would actually help up those numbers. But the vast majority of the people in any country and I'm going to use the United States specifically, are going to remain in the country. So you can remain in the country, you can fight for your civil rights, you can vote in your presidents, you can participate in the political system, you can be treated as a second and third class citizen, you can get killed by the police, you can get red line out of banks and not get loans, you can do all the stuff that y'all love so much doing in this fucking fantastic country called the United States of America. Knock yourself out. But you mean to tell me that 2 to 5% out of that population can't go and set up shop? You don't even have, listen, let's just say it would be in your own interest to allow that to happen. Let's say you don't give a fuck about Africa and you don't even believe that it's possible. How would it harm you if 2 to 5% of the population went over there to set up shop and it actually turned out to be successful? It would only benefit you. So you mean to tell me that that's not even, like, you don't even want a small, minute, insignificant percentage of our population to go and set up shop? You couldn't give a cosign to that? Then I don't know what to say to you. You just a bootlicking fucking nigga, and you deserve everything that happens to you here in America. Now, to put a period on all of this, all of this stuff that I just mentioned in this video is all theoretical. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that I've analyzed the situation, and I've been in this game for a while. I've looked at every possible scenario that can happen in terms of our future as black African people. And the only way we are going to have a future is if we have power. And the only way we're going to have power is to have an independent nation state on the continent. Why do I say on the continent and not in America? Well, Black Wall Street in Tulsa was a perfect example of what happens when you build up anything that outdoes what white people do in their own country. It's a fantasy in your mind that we are going to have a nation within a nation in the United States of America. They wiped out and destroyed their own people who tried to build an enclave or to build their own little situation or sovereign nation inside of their borders. It's not going to happen. It's a fantasy in your mind. And also, we have a birthright. Africa. We were taken from Africa. Descendants of African slaves are, and the problem is we don't know where we were taken from. We like people say, mostly from the West Coast. Okay, but where? We don't know specifically. So if we have a piece of land on the continent, then what happens is, as you're building up and developing that land, you're building and developing your own culture for that land, and whatever we choose to call that land will be our nationality. African really is more of a political term that identifies us with the continent. We will be African as a general term, just like Nigerians and Ghanaians and everybody else. They are African as a general term, but their nationality is their country. We don't have a country. So when we build a country, whatever that country's name is, that's going to be our nationality. But as of right now, we're all African people. We're global African people. If that makes any sense. I don't know how to put it more simply than that. So, back to theory versus reality. Theoretically, this is what we should do to empower ourselves and to build a future for our people. Reality, I don't see it happening in my lifetime. And I am fully prepared. Actually, I know that I will never see nationhood while I'm alive. That's just, maybe if I'm lucky, I will. Or maybe if I'm lucky, I'll get to see it being implemented and put in place and have it rallied around socially, economically, and politically from our people. But realistically, I don't see it. So in the meantime, you got two choices. Are you going to be a part of a non-existent cause? Or are you going to take care of yourself and your circle, then know that you have no support system? See, right now, we're in the phase now, we're in what I call the Doomsday Prepper phase. Because the Doomsday Prepper phase is what you have to be in, because I don't see any talking points in mainstream black media or mainstream America on the media. Mainstream media. pushing the talking points of nationhood for our people, pushing the talking points of a nation state, an independent, recognized by the UN nation state for black African people who have no land and who are treated like third and second class citizens in the lands that they are in. I don't see it. And it's definitely not happening from the black leadership. So I got to take care of me. I got to take care of my family. I got to make sure that I'm straight on a personal level and that they're straight. And that's ultimately what I'm going to be living out my life. Once I get to a certain age, that's going to be my concern. I can't be concerned about this lofty nationhood stuff that's not practical and not happening. And this is not just a Mr. Holism problem. This is a problem for all of us here in this country. What route do you want to go? Do you want to go the doomsday preparation route, or do you want to go the nationhood route? And right now, it seems like everybody's going down the doomsday preparation route. So I can't, unless I have a good contingency of people that's with me on the nationhood route that I can rely on and we can, help each other. I'm not going to be a solo, going on some solo missions and putting myself and my family at risk. So this is the fork in the road that we've come to. So either I'm going to doomsday prep and get my situation together, and then after that, these discussions of nationhood will be some intellectual conversation that I have in a cafe while I'm sipping on some latte with my legs crossed, like my nephew Ambassador Saw always says. It'll just be intellectual discourse. But if we want this to be practical, then we got to get with the talking point that we deserve a nation state. And so that's all I have to say about that. Another thing. I want my words. I want to write my book and finish my book, The Nigger Manufacturing Machine, because I want it to be my legacy. I want it to be here for the future generations who are not cowards and self-hating Negroes, so that maybe they can pick up the baton and run with this thing like my generation was unable to. I want it to be a record stating that when Mr. Holism was on this earth, this is what he thought, and this is what he thought was the solution to our collective problems. And that's it. I'm not a god. I'm not Thor. I'm not all of this. I'm not the creator. I can't control everybody's mind and make them want nationhood. If we want to stay here and be slaves, and that's the fate of black African people, what can I do? All I can do is say that this is what I put out here. This is what I saw. This was my take on reality. Accept it if you want. Reject it if you want. Doesn't matter. I said it. And that's all I got to say about that. Now, holler at you good people later. Peace.